Hey guys, welcome back to Real Talk, the show where we have real talks about real things. Today we're going to be having a real talk with a special guest. And what we're going to be talking about today is in regards to the recent announcement made by the California governor, Governor Newsom, as far as the stay-at-home order and how we are to proceed with things. And we're going to be talking about the response that we should have, maybe according to what the Word has to say on it, and just kind of how we can look at it compared to things that we find in the Word. So I hope you enjoy today's talk. Please leave a like and subscribe if you haven't. That'd be awesome. And it really helps me stay motivated to make these videos. So I hope you guys enjoy, and please welcome our special guest. Alright guys, so our special guest today is actually my beautiful fiance Peyton. So we watched the Governor Newsom video today together, and I decided, you know what, maybe we should make a response video to this, and she was kind enough to agree to do it. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We have gathered some material as far as reference and verses and whatnot to kind of talk about the whole shelter-in-place situation filtered through the Word. So that's exactly what we're going to do today. So anyway, I guess a good place to start, or what are your first thoughts on the whole situation?
Honestly, my very first thought was just like sadness and kind of like disappointment, because I had a feeling that like the stay-at-home order or just all the stuff was going to be far out, or there'd be different things in place, and like looking at other states, like getting kind of like almost jealous or envious just over like that they're opening, or they have things that are opening, and then it's like our governor was kind of like, oh, it could be weeks, could be months, there's all these steps, hang tight kind of thing, and I was kind of like bummed or disappointed.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, we've been kind of stuck in place and whatnot, and it can be frustrating because we just want to get back to our normal lives, and it's really easy for us to get antsy or eager, but, you know, I definitely can relate with that. But I think, too, it's important for us to filter it through the Word, which is what we're going to do, obviously. But, you know, it's not going to be our natural reaction, I guess, to, you know, be okay with staying in place longer, you know. And I think, too, we live in more of a rural area, so it's a lot different for us because we feel like, oh, we're not really in danger, or we're not as much of a threat as, you know, some of the big cities or whatever. So we're kind of like, why can't we just get back on with our lives, you know? And so I think it's just a lot different, like compared to someone who might be living in the cities. It might be a completely different viewpoint. I know I was talking to my sister who lives in Georgia, and she was saying, you know, how they're obviously opening up Georgia and getting stuff, they're getting the ball rolling and everything. But a lot of the people there are like, whoa, slow down. You know, why are you guys opening up? We need to be taking it slow, which is kind of the opposite mentality of what we have around here. So I just think that's kind of interesting to see that. And two, it's not like, you know, they said that we're going to be in quarantine forever. They did say there's different stages, but obviously if we look at it for what it is, those stages are going to take a long time before we get back to even where we were before. So yeah, but first of all, you know, I guess the first important question to ask is, you know, what does the Bible have to say about this, and specifically, you know, obeying authority? Because, you know, we can talk about, like, you know, they're taking away our rights, or they're going against our rights, and, you know, what really are our rights? Not even necessarily on like a state or country level, but as far as biblically, like, what does the Lord tell us to do if, you know, about the government in these kind of situations? And honestly, the Bible is really clear about what it says here. I think personally, I have a couple verses that we can talk about, but do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, I just had some verses too.
I think Romans 13 is kind of the biggest one that we can look at, definitely, as far as government.
It says, let every person be subject to their governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God.
Yeah, so that's pretty dang clear. Like, you know, authority, our government has been placed there by God, and we're to respect that because it has been ordained, has been allowed by God. You know, even though we get antsy, or even if we don't agree with what the, you know, government or governing body is saying, we should still respect it because we're still called to respect it on a biblical level, you know. And for me, like, I work at the church, so I really have to, you know, uphold that image, you know, because I can't be, you know, going against what the government says, because it tells me in the word that, you know, we're supposed to respect that. And as an employee of the church, that's kind of especially my responsibility. You know?
No, totally. And I think that we can even like take that outside of just the COVID-19 thing, and like other things, like laws that we break that are just like, oh, like it's fine, I'm not like stealing or something. But even like speeding or like not wearing your seatbelt, like, because those things can kind of be downplayed, but this still applies to it. Like that's still like obeying your government, and like through that obeying the Lord. Yeah.
And two, you know, we can even take it another step and say, well, you know, this is why it's really important for us to vote when we are of age, you know, because these people are making these decisions and we're getting all upset about it. And obviously people are going to make into office that you don't agree with. That's just how it goes. But that is why it's important to vote, is because these people are in office. Yes, not only because God ordained them there or allowed them to be there or placed them there, but also we voted them in office. You know, the majority voted, got them in, or if it's, you know, obviously the presidential is the electoral college, but either way, how we have it set up is we did vote them into office. So I think it's important just to remember, like, you know, when we get frustrated with this, just think like, okay, well, this is important, why we take action and, you know, vote on even the little stuff. It's pretty important. So anyway, that's just all I had.
I also like found another good one. It's in Titus 3, verses 1 and 2. And it says, remind them to be submissive to the rulers and authorities, to be obedient, to be ready for every good work, to speak evil of no one, to avoid quarreling, to be gentle, and to show perfect courtesy toward all people.
Yeah.
And like, that's just how to be a Christian almost, you know, that's like,
definitely.
You know, goes past the COVID-19 thing and just to our daily lives and how we are to shine the light of Christ, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's definitely true. Yeah, no, I found a verse too. 1 Peter 5:5, I found, it says, likewise, you younger people, submit yourselves to your elders. Yes, all of you be submissive to one another and be clothed with humility. For God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. And this is just, you know, especially our generation can be definitely, I mean, every generation can be opinionated, but our generation, you know, we kind of have a lot of limelight right now, I guess. And it's important for us to remember, you know, we still are to respect our elders, yes, but also those people in authority. And, you know, that we should be clothed with that humility. We should be humble, you know, don't be proud, because in reality, we don't really know a lot, you know. Obviously, the stereotype exists for a reason, you know. For 20, we act like we know everything, but in reality, we don't know. We're still learning a lot. So I think it's important to have that humility and just act accordingly, I guess.
Yeah, totally. I was going to also talk about wisdom.
Yeah.
I don't know, because it's also really easy to kind of want to fall into the category of, like, our rights and our Constitution and stuff. And, like, I totally agree with the Constitution. Obviously, like, that's what our country was founded on. And it's really easy to just be like, this isn't right. What they're doing isn't right. I don't agree with it. And we're not necessarily, like, I don't know. It's not to agree with everything somebody says. It's just to be obedient to them.
Absolutely, yeah.
And just,
I'm not saying like at all that we have to agree with it, because obviously we're going to have disagreements, but we are to be obedient.
Yeah.
Like you were talking about with the Constitution, right? I kind of took some notes on that. What about the Constitution, right? Because a lot of this, I absolutely agree. I think, you know, and a lot of this, the government can tend to be overstepping the boundary as far as what the Constitution has to say about it. And obviously, you know, I support the Constitution 100%. I think we should uphold the Constitution 100%. But what about it? Because, you know, the Bible tells us to obey that authority. But then we also have this Constitution, which our authority wrote, which is saying, you know, hey, if this happens, you know, stand up against it. So I think there's kind of just like I don't know, you know. And really, I think on a personal level, yes, I think, like I said, it's absolutely right. They can definitely be stepping over their boundaries on this one. But being in a place, I guess, for me especially, like being in a place of employment or leadership in the church, I think it's important for me to just, you know, even if I don't agree with what the authority is saying, you know, I'm still called to obey it. And I think that's kind of where my line has to be drawn. That's my personal conviction, is that, you know, like, man, I really do agree with the Constitution 100%, and I think that it should be upheld. But as far as, you know, filtering that through the word, I think, I am just called to obey that authority. And I think that too, it still gets kind of confusing there, because it's like, well, didn't the authority make the Constitution? Isn't the authority held to that Constitution? Yes, I think the authority is held to that Constitution, but I'm held to the Lord. What is the Lord telling me to do? To obey that authority. And I think, personally, I think that is to, even though I don't agree with what they have to say, I'm supposed to obey it. And going back to my first video, if you guys remember, we talked about James 1 and having that pure joy, regardless of our circumstance, and, that we're supposed to be rejoicing in the Lord no matter what our circumstance and no matter what we're going through. And I think that speaks volumes, now with everything we're going through, considering that we just got this extended or whatever. I think we should still be grateful, because the Lord has a perfect plan, and the Lord is going to work out whatever he has to work out. And, I think that says a lot right there too, is to trust the Lord, have that joy, because we can trust the Lord, because it is according to his perfect plan, because he did put those people in office. He did ordain those people. And I think that says a lot, is that the Lord has his hand in everything, and we should trust and have faith in that. And I think that's the biggest thing for me, is like, man, a lot of this I don't agree with, a lot of this I don't really want to go along with, but the Lord tells me to, because he's got it all worked out. And I think for me, that's where I'm kind of standing on that fence, I guess.
Yeah, and I was gonna say too, like, that's important, like, in how you kept saying, like, for me and stuff, because, like, the convictions people have are gonna be different.
Absolutely,
like, compared on where they're at in, like, what we call the sanctification process. And I also actually kind of want to talk about that, because it can be like, okay, well, where is my place in this? Because it could be a really confusing time. And I just, the classic Proverbs 3:5-6, which is trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your path.
Yeah.
And I think that's just important, during these times, and when you are confused, and just like, Lord, what should I do? To go to him with those questions, because he will give you peace in whatever it is he will have you to do. And just to be able to surrender that, I guess, pride too, because there can be a sense of pride in things like this, and just be able to be like, Lord, I just want to do what your will is for my life. Help me to have understanding. And it does say, like, for those who lack wisdom, to pray, and ask for it, and God will grant you with that. And so I would just say also during these times, like, pray, and really seek out the Lord too, and not just because you want to know, but just because you want to serve him in the best way.
Exactly. And I think at the end of the day, that should be our goal. We shouldn't be concerned with, what's going to happen next, because it tells us, tomorrow has its own worries. We can read 365 times in the Bible that we are not to worry. That's not our job, is to worry. It's not. We're to give those worries to the Lord. And I think, exactly like you said, that should be our number one goal, is just to serve the Lord and seek what the Lord has for you, and I really, for me, that's not to be concerned with what's going on right now. That's just to be like making these videos, or we're doing the little kids program on our church's Facebook page, so whatever you can do to serve the Lord, just ask the Lord what he would have you to do during these times. And it can, it can make you bummed out sometimes, obviously, but I would just encourage the viewers to have that heart of, joy still, and encourage them in that. But definitely like you said, like Proverbs 3:5-6 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. But the key part is lean not on your own understanding, right? But in all of our ways acknowledge him, and he'll direct our path. And I think a lot of time it's our, flesh reaction to lean on our own understanding. When we see all these news reports or see what's going on in the world, our, knee-jerk reaction is obviously going to be, and it's not unwise to know what's going on and to figure out what's going on, but I think motive and reaction are important. What is your motive for doing it, and what is your reaction going to be? Is it going to be give it to the Lord, or is it going to be,
shove it in somebody's face,
get mad at it, or whatever the case may be, right? Like, the only reaction you should have is to give it to the Lord and ask him what he would have you to do about it. But like I was saying, our knee-jerk reaction is to lean on our own understanding. And it was like, oh, well, the Constitution says this. And that's where it gets confusing, because the Constitution does say that. And I absolutely agree. Like I said, we should uphold the Constitution. But that's where the leaning on our own understanding comes, because, it is our understanding that they are going against the Constitution on a lot of this, or, that boundary has been overstepped. But the part where we give it to the Lord, you know, and this is what sets us apart as Christians too, is when we give it to the Lord, it's not going to look normal, or, you know, it's not going to be normal for us to be, you know, content with that. But that's exactly what the Lord calls us to be, is content, because he has his hand in it. He has a perfect will for it all, and he's going to work it out. So yeah, like you said, absolutely, you know, we're not supposed to lean on our own understanding, but we are supposed to acknowledge the Lord in all of our ways, and he will direct the path. So I think it's really important just to remember that, you know, it will be our knee-jerk reaction to lean on our own understanding, and it is mine too. And I'm trying to put, you know, a personal practice of just like not worrying about it, I guess. That's just not what the Lord has called me to do. The Lord has called me to do everything I can to, you know, shine his light and, you know, put forth his glory, I guess, in this time, and just to share with people that heart of contentment, that heart of pure joy, regardless of circumstance. I feel like that's just what he's called me to do during this time, and so that's my goal. I'm going to do what he has called me to do. So, yeah.
This is a genuine question that I just thought of. God will fight our battles, like we know that, but like David still had to like go collect the stones and like
absolutely
throw the stone. I don't know. So like, what about like the people who like not are going against government, but just like, hey, what about this? Like, is that wrong?
So to that, I would say, who was David fighting?
Goliath.
And what was Goliath's stance?
The world. I mean, evil.
But what was he saying? What was he saying that would trigger? First of all, he was in war. War is a different time. Second of all, what was Goliath saying that initiated the fight, initiated the response from David?
I don't know.
He was exactly. He was taunting the Lord of Israel. He was taunting the one true God, right? And I think that absolutely, if the governing body goes against the Lord, I think 100% it's our duty, especially with the Constitution backing us up, it's our duty to uphold the law of the Lord, right? And uphold the Lord's name. And that is why David, again, like, it was war. But then second of all, the Philistines and Goliath was taunting the Lord of Israel, right? And I think right now our government hasn't done anything specifically to the church. It's been a very general, very broad thing. And I think that, you know, as far as that, we can't really get up in arms because they're trying to shut the church down. Like, obviously, if it was like, oh, we're just shutting all churches down, no one else, like,
or like no Bibles,
that would be one thing. If they were being, you know, like tyrannical like that and cutting our freedom of speech from, you know, reading the word, studying the word, being in fellowship. Exactly. I think that would be a whole nother animal, but I think that we haven't gotten to that point yet. So that's why we're to obey that authority. Okay, that's good. Yeah, that would be my response.
That answers the question. And like, too, I think just like be careful with your words, because as believers, people already kind of have this idea of you, and just
preconceived notion.
Yeah, exactly. And just just be careful, and especially like not even just politically, but just with negativity during this time. And that's really hard. I mean, I can be a really negative person. Like, if there was a job, I would like excel at that. But we're not called to be negative. So
I mean, not to put you on the spotlight, but right after we watched the press conference of Governor Newsom, your first response was to text your mom about, you know, the negativity of
that's
it.
True.
I was like, whoa, don't fuel the fire, you know. I don't know, like, but obviously you are very self-aware of that, and you know, the Lord has put that in your heart, so I think that's good. But, you know, it is our initial reaction to be negative at first too. And I think, like you're saying, you know, especially as believers, like, we are called to be set apart. You know, we're not supposed to conform to the pattern of being negative or reacting negative. You know, what's going to be setting us apart in this is going to be giving it to the Lord, having that joyful heart, regardless of this negative circumstance, right? That is going to set us apart. And people are going to look at that like, what's wrong with you? You know, like, what's different about you? And the answer to that is Jesus, right? But if we're negative, not only are we just going to be conforming to what everyone else is doing right now, but two, you know, it shows that we're not giving it to the Lord. And then, you know, people can look in at us and say like, oh, you're a Christian, but, you know, all you're talking about is negative stuff. So That's exactly right.
Exactly. And not even just like on the outside appearance, but even on the inward appearance. Because negativity never, you can't just like sit on the couch all day and think negative thought, and then just feel like happy or like joyful or just like, Lord, I'm so glad I just spent the day worshiping you. Like, because worship also goes just beyond music. We can worship him with our thoughts. And so if we're just sitting there all day, negative.
Yeah. And that's where in James 1 it says like pure joy, right? Yeah. It's not just like, I'm going to put on this happy facade. It's like, no, your soul, spirit, and physical form, have to have that joyful. It has, it's a pure joy, because we have that hope of Christ. Yeah. So, we can't put on the facade and expect that to be good. We have to be bearing those actual fruits. Yeah. And you can't fake fruits. So, no, and then going on the whole Constitution thing, I was saying like, well, does that null and void it because the law set up the Constitution and they're going against it? Anyway, I had a verse I wanted to share that was 1 Peter 2:13, and it says, "Therefore submit yourselves to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake, whether to the king as supreme, or to the governors as to those who are sent by him, for the punishment of evildoers and for the praise of those who do good." So that says it pretty directly right there. Submit yourselves to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake, whether it's to the king as supreme or to the governors as those who are sent by him to punish for the punishment of evil. I don't know. For me, it's just carved in stone. Like that's what we're called to do. Even if we were in another country where it was a communist situation or a tyrannical situation, if we're a believer, that's what we're called to do. Obviously, if they're going against the Lord, we already talked about that, but the Lord put them there for a reason, and who are we to question that authority of God? So anyway, that's what I had on that. Do you have any more verses or anything you wanted to share?
No, even though like 17 like really sums it up too in the same chapter in 1 Peter. It says, honor everyone, love the brotherhood, fear God, honor the emperor. And I think it's interesting that it says honor everyone and then honor the emperor. Like, it doesn't say like...
It goes out of its way to say,
like honor, and then love the brotherhood and then fear God. Like, so like the church and the Lord is set apart from that. But like the government and everyone else is also set apart as like honor.
And again, like, in our situation, nothing has been set against the church directly. No. So it's not like the government's doing this specifically to shut the church down. Yeah, I think it's just important to trust what the Lord has planned. He doesn't call us to rebel. Like all the verses that we've read have said, we are to honor those people in the place of authority because the Lord has ordained them. And as hard as that is, as much as we want to question it or go against it, we are called to obey that. And again, not saying that we can't have a disagreement towards it or we can't, take action to change it even. But I think as far as being negative or like taking that negative attitude towards it or straight up rebelling against it, I think as believers, we're not called to do that.
Yeah, because honestly, like when we have a negative attitude towards something, we're also like saying like, God, what you've provided isn't good enough.
Absolutely.
And that's with anything.
Yeah.
So... just to keep that in mind when those negative thoughts come, to just like take them as least amount of little foxes as possible.
And we really live in an amazing country where we are able to, if we have a problem with something, there is processes to go through to have things changed. As hard or easy as those are, we still have opportunity. We are set up in a way to where we still have power as the people, I guess, and like I said, if we disagree with something, I'm not saying we can't go through those processes to have that changed. Yes, granted, it might be very hard depending on what, is trying to be changed. But all I'm saying is that we are to obey that authority and not rebel against it, I guess, but I think going through those processes that our country, our government has set up to have those things changed is okay. I think that's a different ground than rebelling against it. I don't know. So do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that it's important to not be naive and just be like, oh, oh, like, it's the government, it's fine, they want exactly the best for me, like,
yeah. God says not to question that.
Yeah, no, totally. And to just, like, because he also says to be wise. The Bible tells us to be wise. And part of that is not being naive. So, like, keeping track of what's going on and just what the authorities are saying and, their stances on the Bible and things that they're going against in the Word, I think is just important, too. Because we are called to be wise. And just like in this video, don't take this as like we're telling you to just like be naive and just sit back and
I mean, we watched the video, we were being knowledgeable. That's we should definitely be knowledgeable. You should definitely know what's going on around you. I definitely think that's important. And as far as respecting the authority that's above, or the authority that's put in place over you, we are called to honor that because God ordained it. And if we don't honor that, then we're not honoring the decision that God's perfect plan that he made, right? Or if we do honor that, then we are showing honor for what God has planned for us. And I think too, that goes with every situation, whether that be like the workplace, right? That person of authority over you in the workplace, you're called to honor them too because God has ordained them over you there as well. It goes on many different levels. So.
Yeah, like we're about to get married, and so it says like to be submissive to your husbands. So that will be a job that I'm called to do too. And the ultimate reason why we do submit to those authorities or honor those authorities is because we're being obedient to God and honoring him. And that's the ultimate reason why any of this is even why we're talking about this, is because we are glorifying the Lord and just trusting him and honoring him by honoring the authorities.
Definitely, yeah. And I think, just like if we're, brothers and sisters in Christ in the church, we are called to keep each other accountable there too in that situation. And I think it's the same thing with that governing body, right? Is that honor them, right? But then in those situations where they are going against things that the Lord has to say, or they are going against the church in that way, right? I think that is probably a time where it's acceptable. We are, all right, time out, and there have been things in the past, where that has happened, where things have been, kind of butted heads versus government and church. And I think, that in those situations, it's important for us to stand on the ground of the Lord, right? Like David with Goliath, right? When Goliath was taunting about the Lord or going against the things of the Lord, that's when David, was called to step up and defeat him. And, not to say, again, we're not to rebel against the authority put over us, but I think it's when they start to go against the things of the Lord, which I don't think they have in this circumstance yet. I don't think that has been played out yet directly against the church. It's definitely a broad, generalized blanket. So, yeah, sweet. That's pretty much all that I had to say.
Yeah, no, exactly. Nope.
Sweet.
Just to like sum it up, just honor the government because you're honoring the Lord.
Definitely. But be knowledgeable, be wise, and seek what the Lord has for your life. Like what is the Lord going to call you to do? And I think that it should be our main priority, not worrying about everything that's going on, but worry about what the Lord is calling you to do next. And that's just for everything in general. Well, thank you guys for watching. Leave a like, subscribe. If you made it this far in the video, comment down below. Constitution.
Why not?
But seriously, leave a like and subscribe. These videos aren't monetized. I'm not making any money off of them, but I do enjoy seeing your guys' interaction as far as likes, subscribes, and comments. It really gives me motivation to keep them going. So I would ask you guys to do that. Thank you guys for watching Real Talk, and
thanks for keeping this talk real.
Bye.